So I'm sure you've worked with young people who may be conflict avoidant in your therapy room or in the classroom or wherever you work. I just want to say before I walk through this example, sometimes, especially in classrooms, it's all about so much attention goes to the people or the youth that need the most attention. So the people kind of at the bottom rung of the classroom and at the top rung, the ones who are the high achievers, they're paid attention to, they're acknowledged, they're validated, and those 5 or 10% at the bottom who are really struggling and who are causing a lot of disruption, they're paid a lot of attention to. And sometimes that kind of middle arc of the classroom, the folks who may not be causing any trouble, they're not as acknowledged as much. And I think that is definitely an issue when we're talking about having trauma-informed classrooms, or really any context for that matter. I'm just thinking of the classroom in the moment. And just because somebody is conflict avoidant and is trying to stay out of trouble or trying to be compliant, it absolutely doesn't mean that they haven't been traumatized in their past or haven't struggled with or dealt with trauma. So that's a really important thing to consider. I've worked with so many young people who have experienced this, is what you see on the slide here. They may be conflict avoidant, avoid situations, but then when you go back through their history, they may have grown up with a lot of experiences of domestic violence. Remember, that's one of the adverse childhood experiences we talked about, and that may not be something that's happening directly or explicitly to them. They're not the one, getting assaulted, but one of their parents or caregivers may be getting assaulted, and it absolutely has the potential to have a detrimental effect on them. So in this example you see here, the young person witnesses domestic violence over the course of her life. Well, maybe when she's very young, she runs to her room, she flees the situation, she has that somatic kind of flight response. That adaptation forms over time, and it presents itself as somebody who avoids situations in which any type of conflict can arise. It's so important to look out for this. And of course, again, with all of this work, it's like we want to find the healthy balance of being a trauma-informed youth professional, of looking at behavior through a trauma-informed lens, but then at the same time not just extremely over-analyzing every little piece of behavior with youth, because then you won't have time to do your therapy, or you won't have time to prepare for your class. But especially with this example, what's important is that we check our own feelings. When somebody is extremely confrontative and disruptive, that can be very uncomfortable for the adult facilitator or the teacher or the therapist. It can bring up anxiety. It can bring up thoughts of, what am I supposed to do right now? How do I handle this person? When somebody's conflict avoidant, though, none of those feelings might come up. So there's not as much of an incentive or motivation to intervene in any way. And that's why I think this example is so important, because this type of traumatic adaptation presents itself in many ways, obviously not just from somebody who has experienced domestic violence, but so many of those adverse childhood experiences or other types of traumas we've seen or we've reviewed in the previous presentations can present themselves. The adaptation over time can present itself as conflict avoidance, and it's something that we want to think about, because we want to be trying to think about not just being motivated to be trauma informed when we're uncomfortable, when somebody's being super confrontative or something like that, but also when something like this is completely not on our radar. So that's why this example is extremely important.